exposed to the comet a little bit. What happened to Doris is happening to them. Only slower. And like, they're dangerous. Like what happened to Larry.
Night of the Comet was released on the 16th of November 1984, arriving in the UK 6 months later on the 8th of May 1985. It was produced on a tiny budget of $700,000. Given its small budget, you'd be forgiven for thinking this was a straight-to-video niche release. However, it came third at the box office in America on its opening weekend, staying in cinemas for 6 weeks, and took approximately $14.4 million at the box office, which is impressive as it was released the same month as Ghostbusters, The Karate Kid, and The Never-Ending Story. Although a reasonable success at the time, it became a VHS rental favourite, gaining a loyal following, and in recent years, thanks to the internet, it has developed a cult status. The online reviewer Keith Phipps of The Dissolve wrote that the movie's cult following comes from how matter-of-factly it treats its weird premise.
Did you ever wonder what it would be like to be one of the last people on Earth?
We're talking Ghost Town!
Who would you see?
There's nobody. There's nobody.
What would you do?
Hey, I'm sorry if the end of the world makes me a little nervous.
Where would you go?
The stars are open!
Well, get ready to find out, because the comet is coming into your orbit.
The legal drinking age is now 10, but you will need ID. Let's be real.
It's the night of the comet.
What do you give me if I come back?
Texas?
Night of the comet.
I'll be taking requests from all you teenage comet zombies.
The night the teenagers ruled the world.
Yeah!
Night of the comet.
The movie opens with the voice narration spoken by actor Michael Hanks, explaining a comet's appearance near Earth, an event which has not occurred in 65 million years, and coincided with the extinction event that wiped out the dinosaurs. On the night of the comet's passage, 11 days before Christmas, large crowds gather outside to watch and celebrate. 18-year-old Reggie works as an usher in a cinema in LA, and she is a competitive video game player. That night, Reggie stays after the cinema closes to help her boyfriend Larry, the cinema's projectionist, so he can loan her a film reel for illegal duplication. For his own profit, Sam, her younger sister, is a 16-year-old cheerleader and a stereotypical valley girl. After a heated argument with her stepmother Doris, where Sam accuses her of cheating on her father whilst he's away in the military, Sam spends the night in a steel shed in the backyard. Both sisters awaken the next morning to blood-red skies and the realisation that the human race has been wiped out. Anyone who has not been surrounded by steel when the Earth passed through the tail of the comet has been reduced to piles of red dust. After hearing a broadcast from a local radio disc jockey, they decide to go to the station to investigate. Unfortunately, they discover the radio station is abandoned and the show is pre-recorded. They come across another survivor there, Hector Gomez, who spent the night in the back of his steel truck. When Sam talks into the microphone, she is heard by scientists in an underground installation made out of steel in the desert, who predicted the effects of the comet, but carelessly left their air vents open. Now, as various survivors of the comet, who were only partially surrounded by steel, are decaying into flesh-hungry zombies, the scientists are attempting to come up with a vaccine made of the blood of people not infected by the comet. The trio must fight their way past not only the cannibal zombies, but need to outsmart a group of scientists desperate not to become zombies themselves. Now, the Comet was written and directed by Thom Eberhardt. Thom went on to direct another cult classic, Captain Ron, in 1992, and early directed the Michael Caine movie Without a Clue in 1988. He also went on to write the script for Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. Eberhardt took inspiration from his childhood for the story for Night of the Comet, using his love of the B movies from the 50s, such as Five, Invaders from Mars and Target Earth. These saw characters typically attempt to survive apocalyptic events. He also admired the female characters and the associated actors of the 1940s and 50s, such as in movies like My Man Godfrey. Eberhardt wanted to merge the ideal of a strong female protagonist. Further inspiration came from the real-life teenage girls whom he'd met while filming the PBS specials. Without telling the girls details about the script, he asked them how to describe how they would react to an apocalyptic event. The girls saw the scenario as an exciting adventure. Using their answers, Eberhardt wrote the script to be light-hearted and venturesome, combining this with his love of post-apocalyptic movies set in empty cities. such as The World, the Flesh and the Devil from 1959. Trade paper Variety on release commented that Eberhardt created a visually arresting B picture in the neon primary colours of the cult hit Liquid Sky, as well as pointing out the similarities with The Day of the Triffids, The Omega Man and The Last Woman on Earth. The original title for the movie was Teenage Comet Zombies. It was produced by Atlantic Releasing, an independent production company also known as Atlantic Releasing Corporation. Atlantic would later go on to produce low-budget hits like Teen Wolf in 1985. Eberhardt said the executives at the company almost withdrew from financing the project after the screening of his poorly received feature debut, Soul Survivor, which he shot back in 1982, leading him having trouble convincing the studio to let him direct Night of the Comet. Eventually, Eberhardt was able to persuade Atlantic to give him another chance. The company, however, assigned producing partners Andrew Lane and Wayne Crawford. The duo had recently overseen Valley Girl, which was a surprise hit for the company in 1983. Atlantic wanted to quickly capitalise on its success and the popularity of other quirky drive-in movies, like the punk noir Repo Man. However, Lane and Crawford clashed with Eberhardt during filming. Early in production, they attempted to have him replaced. Eberhardt, however, praised their producing skills and said that the movie could not have been made without their help. Eberhardt would later say they did not understand the film and resented being assigned to such a low-budget B-movie. Although Lane and Crawford didn't receive a writing credit on Night of the Comet, the producers were actively involved in revamping the script with Eberhardt. The pair would later produce the cult movie Jake Speed, a homage to the pulp serials, starring Crawford in the title role, whilst Lane took on directing duties. Night of the Comet would also represent Atlantic's first national release. When the film opened in theatres, their gamble paid off, as it proved to be another hit for the company, taking over $3.5 million during its opening weekend, making it a pre-Christmas sleeper, with box office earnings of $8 million after only 10 days. The movie stars Cathrine Mary Stewart as Regina Reggie Belmont. Stewart, of course, is known for another movie in 1984, The Last Starfighter, which is a role reversal as Stewart's character in Night of the Comet is an expert video arcade game player. Cathrine later starred in Weekend at Bernie's before having a long career in TV, appearing in soap operas and many TV movies. Kelli Maroney stars as Sam Belmont. Originally Heather Langenkamp of A Nightmare on Elm Street auditioned for the role of Sam and was the #1 choice on the casting list, but the role ultimately went to Maroney. Kelli was also a soap opera star, appearing in the long-running One Life to Live. Previously she starred in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. She went on to star in another cult classic, Killbots, better known as Chopping Mall, later in 1986. Robert Belchain plays Hector Gomez, probably best known for his role as Commander Chakotay on the 90s television series Star Trek Voyager.
Beam me up, Scotty.
At first he wasn't keen on the role after playing a similar role in the 1982 black comedy Eating Raoul, but changed his mind when he realised his character had the potential to be the last man on Earth. Sharon Farrell plays Reggie and Sam's stepmother Doris, another soap opera star. The Eberhardt deliberately cast actors used to the demands of the fast-paced production style of TV filming. This would save him time and money on multiple takes. Sharon's son, Chance Boyle, also stars as Brian, the little boy survivor. Mary Warrenoff stars as Audrey White. Co-star Robert Beltran actually recommended Warrenoff for the role after working with him on Eating Raoul. Warrenoff also wrote most of her dialogue for her scenes at the radio station with Beltran. She has starred alongside Paul Bartel in many movies, such as Chopping Mall, but is also famous for her roles in cult movies, such as Warlock, and of course Roger Corman's Death Race 2000, a poster of which appears in the foyer of the cinema that Reggie works at. Geoffrey Lewis stars as Dr. Carter, the leader of the think tank. Many may know Geoffrey for playing opposite Clint Eastwood in Any Which Way But Loose and its sequel. Michael Bowen, star of Breaking Bad, has an early role as Larry the cinema projectionist. Fan favourite Ivan E. Roth stars as Willie. He also starred in Night of the Creeps and also the Tales from the Crypt TV series, while Dick Rude and Chris Pedersen play the zombie stock boys. Mark Popple has a small role as Danny Mason Keener. Mark previously starred in John Carpenter's Christine. At the beginning of the movie, Reggie is upset because the player DMK has sported a perfect list of wins on the Tempest video game in the theatre lobby. Eberhardt was constantly asked by the production crew who was the DMK from the Tempest arcade game scores. Originally it was just meant to demonstrate in the script that Reggie's strong competitive nature, but eventually he cast Mark to explain who was the mysterious DMK, and created the scene where the convertible that almost runs over Sam at the movie's ending is driven by Danny with DMK on his license plate. Principal photography was scheduled to begin in January 1984. However, filming took place in and around Los Angeles over the Christmas period in December 1983, taking advantage of the downtown Bunker Hill area, a recent urban renewal project where new streets and skyscrapers had replaced an old neighbourhood once used in the silent comedies and later film noir. Eberhardt explained that there was no trick photography involved in creating the uninhabited Los Angeles. After studying traffic patterns and noting the surprising amount of deserted bursts throughout the city, he directed the cast and crew to work quickly within these silent breaks to capture the impression of emptiness. Some interior scenes were shot at the Raleigh Studios in Hollywood, whilst the radio station set was built in an abandoned warehouse. The sequence at the department store was shot at night in the Sherman Oaks Galleria, the same mall used later in Commando in 1985, and yes, in Shopping Mall in 1986. One key location is the historic El Rey Theatre on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. Visual effects were provided by DreamQuest Images. Their work mainly consisted of rotoscoping, and many shots used the simple red filters to achieve the eerie red skies, whilst the effects for the think tank were achieved with miniatures and used forced perspective. The scientists refer to the dust that humans and animals turn into to be calcium dust. Everyone who is exposed to the comet turns into red dust. Simple brick dust was used to show this on screen. Funnily enough, one of the posters in the projection room of the theatre is the movie for Red Dust from 1932. Makeup artist David B. Miller had his first supervisor's job on this film. He only had 6 weeks to prepare for his work on the makeup effects in his garage at home. David later worked on the makeup effects on the Nightmare on Elm Street series and James Cameron's Terminator. The movie soundtrack was composed by David Campbell. He previously composed the score for the Tom Cruise movie All the Right Moves. The tracks are simple synthesized cues that add to the eerie abandoned cityscapes. David would become a very successful arranger, working on many famous movie scores, and later composed the soundtrack for the movie Joy. Unfortunately, the score has never been released on its own. However, the soundtrack for the movie was released by Macola Records, containing tracks by artists such as Amy Holland and Chris Farron, and the group Revolver, but not Tammy Holbrook's version of Girls Just Wanna Have Fun for some reason. Since time and budget were tight and they needed to avoid retakes, during production Eberhardt encouraged the cast to react to any unexpected occurrences in character. When her Mac 10 jammed several times, Kelli Maroney improvised the Uzi line.
See, this is the problem with these things. Daddy would have gotten us Uzis.
The car didn't know the difference.
When Sam is arguing with his stepmother, Sharon actually slapped Maroney for real. Maroney felt like she wasn't getting the right reaction to Farrell's fake slaps and asked Farrell to slap her in order to get an authentic response. Stewart almost did most of her own stunts, except for riding the motorcycle through Los Angeles. The long shots of Stewart on the motorcycle are of a stuntwoman, while the close-ups of Stewart were done by putting the motorcycle on the top of a flatbed truck. Thom Eberhardt makes a director's cameo in the photos of Reggie and Sam's father, and Hector's family are actually pictures of various members of Eberhardt's wife. Also, Eberhardt's car can be seen at the stoplight in the montage of the desolated Los Angeles. The production design was by John Muto, who went on to work on the cult classic Species. He used what he describes as a comic book sensibility for the movie's overall look. Characters were given specific colours, with the bad guys in blues and greys and the sisters in brighter colours. I first watched Night of the Comet on VHS as a teenager, and I must admit I didn't rate it on my first viewing. Having no idea about the Valley Girl culture of LA, and malls were just a distant thing of the future for me. Also, it just didn't seem to be a very scary zombie movie. The comedy horror genre was a strange combination, although over time I did come to enjoy the host of comedy horror movies of the era. House, Return of the Living Dead and its sequel, and Night of the Creeps are a particular favourite of mine. Although featuring zombies and a fair degree of action, most of the movie seems too low budget on its initial viewing. However, after rewatching a few years later on the fantastic BBC Two series Moviedrome, presented by Repo Man director Alex Cox, obviously being that little bit older, it gave me a fresh perspective on the movie. Although Alex didn't seem a big fan at the time.
Night of the Comet is a mixture of the wide-eyed 1950s type of science fiction movie and the post-apocalyptic, punky science fiction style. It has a lot of time-lapse photography, whereby the camera runs slowly, shooting only 2 or 3 frames every second, and as a result, cloud formations or what have you go extremely fast. It also has a lot of coloured filters on the camera lens, whereby an ordinary street or sky or whatever is made to look weird. But what it doesn't have really is a sense of driving manic purpose. Compare it to The Incredible Shrinking Man, or to The Thing, both part of this season. They were made in the 1950s and don't have the same attempts at humour. They're better, I think. Night of the Comet does feature one essential cult element, in the presence of Mary Woronov, the very tall actress who starred in many Paul Bartel films. It also contains Dick Rude from Repo Man and Chris Peterson from Suburbia as mutant punk supermarket bag boys. As often with this kind of film, you really sort of wish the villains were the heroes.
Night of the Comet sits amongst a large number of apocalypse and post-apocalypse cinema and television that was produced in the 1980s, like Steel Dawn and of course Mad Max 2. Like many horror movies of the 1970s and 80s, it owes a debt to Romero's classic Dawn of the Dead, with its shopping mall shootouts. Night of the Comet has several critiques of the consumer culture contained within its plot and dialogue. When the think tank scientists are looking for Reggie and Sam, wondering where the girls might be, one member of the think tank says,
"But the whole area is an absolute monument to consumerism. All we can do is hope. Check all the floors, including the basement."
It reminds me of another favourite low-budget movie, Trancers, also released in 1984, with similarities with its use of neon lighting, of course zombies, and its Christmas setting too. It's a movie too I developed a love of thanks to Moviedrome. Night of the Comet is not perfect. If you look closely enough, sure, you can spot the skyscraper window washers caught on camera in what is meant to be the deserted streets. The movie also doesn't deliver quite enough scares. Sure, it was released as a PG-13 in the States, one of the first to receive the new certification. Unfortunately for me, personally, it sags under the weight of expectation in its third act. The lack of colour in the later think tank scenes, and of course the poor costume design for the scientists, make the movie very dull in comparison to the neon lighting and blood-red skyline seen in the earlier scenes. This places the picture in the realms of being obviously very low budget, not quite delivering some key sequences. The zombies are not really the main antagonist. In fact, there are only a handful of zombies in the movie, and the iconic zombie cops only appear in a nightmare sequence. The real threat comes from the member of the think tank, a group of scientists looking for any way to cure the effects from the comet, even willing to sacrifice children for their own survival. On a plus, one of the movie's strengths is the main female protagonists. They are not depicted as helpless females. Reggie particularly seems perfectly capable of defending herself. There are similarities to Ripley's character in the Alien franchise here. Most importantly though, Night of the Comet has its own legacy. Creator Joss Whedon is said to have taken inspiration from this movie for the creation of the character Buffy Summers, seen in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, inspiring both the original 1992 movie and the more popular subsequent rebooted television series in 1997. Another direct influence is on Danny Boyle's 2002 movie 28 Days Later, with its deserted London streets and the tongue-in-cheek tone of the later produced Zombieland in 2009. On the website Rotten Tomatoes, Night of the Comet holds a 79% approval rating based on 33 reviews. The consensus reads, Valley Girl culture, satire Night of the Comet gets a lot of mileage out of its slapstick sci-fi zombie approach. Night of the Comet was also voted number 10 on Bloody Disgusting's poll for the top 10 doomsday horror movies, and author Neil Gaiman reviewed Night of the Comet for Imagine magazine in 1985 and stated that it is one of the most amusing, witty, imaginative and thought-provoking films I've seen that was made with no budget. The movie's cast were positive of its success, but Mary Woronov initially doubted the movie would have any longevity, saying that it's not a cult movie at all, it's a fad movie. She went on to explain that the movie will date very quickly because it's about Valley girls shopping at the mall on the bomb. It's not ahead of its time and it's not behind its time, it's just a combination of elements. I myself feel that's one of the reasons for the movie's longevity and its cult status. This movie couldn't be any more 80s if it tried, especially with the shopping mall montage, and the script is witty, making good use of one-liners. Although Woronov has stated she didn't really enjoy the production, complaining about her costume, and her performance comes across with the air of uninteresting and boredom at times. Because of the movie's cult status, a range of custom action figures were produced, and I came across this image for some toy red dust, which is bizarre if genuine. Because of the popularity of the movie and its cult status, in October 2008, Orion Pictures hired Roxanne Benjamin to write a sci-fi horror remake of the cult classic. Later in April 2019, Benjamin confirmed she'd submitted her script for the remake to Orion, but as of 2022, it's still waiting to go into production. Night of the Comet is available to stream in the States on Prime Video, and occasionally is available to view on Netflix in the UK. However, I do highly recommend owning the Blu-ray release by Arrow Video available here in the UK, and the Shout Factory version which is available in the States, with a fantastic picture transfer with tons of extras. If you haven't watched Night of the Comet, then I highly recommend you do, especially for the 80s nostalgia and the drive-in movie sensibilities that are on show. It's more importantly a progressive movie with a message of hope, with its upbeat ending setting it apart from the other post-apocalyptic movies of the era.
What are you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about you coming in here and ripping us off!
What do you want? You want us to pay for it? What?
You wouldn't believe what we want from you. In your worst nightmare, you wouldn't believe. Let's play a game. It's called Scary Noises.
If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to my channel. Leave a comment on your thoughts on Night of the Comet, and please like and share the video. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on my next review. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.